All right. I think we are live. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holton here. Looks like we are there. There's lots of stuff going on in the Middle East, and we're going to talk about it all. Today's video is coming to you from uh, Armenia. I'm up in the Lori province of Armenia today, and I am going to be talking about all the developments since the last time we met about what's going on with the war in Israel and Iran. Before I do that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Preserve Gold. Uh, it is, let's see here, I'll put that up on the screen. Preserve Gold is, like I say, sponsoring the channel for the next month. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about it. You watching the stuff that's happening overseas, tensions are rising, and there's a lot of stuff happening in the United States as well. I mean, tons of unrest and some real economic headwinds that we're staring down. Tariffs are going up, and inflation could very well creep back in because of that. So, while I support President Trump's strong trade policies that put America first, sometimes doing the right thing costs you, and it may cost our country in terms of inflation and that sort of thing. Bottom line, we're moving into uncertain territory. And that's exactly why, if you're smart, you will prepare. So I've got part of my retirement savings put into physical gold and silver. There's a lot of reasons to do that, a lot of good reasons. You don't want to put all of your money in there, but a good portion of it might not be a bad idea, especially at this juncture. It's not a doomsday move by any stretch. It's just a smart way to protect what you've worked for. Now, many of you don't know that I was a stockbroker for 10 years and so followed the financial markets very closely. Now, gold just hit an all-time high, went over $3,300 an ounce. And so in times of global conflict, well, uh, gold and silver don't just hold their value, they usually surge. As a matter of fact, I've seen some experts saying that gold could go over $4,000 an ounce, especially if the United States jumps into the war in Iran. Now, I try to align my finances with biblical principles, and I want to do business with companies that feel the same way. That's why I trust Preserve Gold. It's a company that operates by principles that I believe in. They're solid people. They make it easy to diversify without any runaround or extra fees or any kind of shenanigans. And right now, they're offering you, my viewers, a free wealth protection guide. If you just go to that text Chuck to 50505. And if you qualify, you could get up to $15,000 in free gold and silver. So don't wait until your 401k turns into a 201k. Text Chuck to 50505 and take that first step, securing what matters. All right, let's move on to today's live. Now, again, I want you to do me a favor and visit Preserve Gold, and we will. I'll mention it again at the end if you need that text message. So, Tehran is a city in panic today. Uh, it's almost deserted. I mean, it's a city of 9 million people, and most of them have fled, or they're taking off for the hills. Government offices are closed. The streets are empty. There's videos coming out of people driving around, and it's just completely deserted. Everything's shut down. Public transit is all but shut down. Uh, they say that at least 700 foreign nationals have now fled into Armenia and Azerbaijan. Here in Armenia, local news is showing people crossing the border on foot from Iran into Armenia, dragging their suitcases. Um, there was video out that showed diplomats from Iran crossing into Azerbaijan. So, border crossings near Julfa and Megri are being overwhelmed. Iranian elites and diplomats, anybody who can leave, who can afford to leave, is leaving, at least leaving the capital, if not the entire country. And pretty much anybody who's in the upper echelons of the IRGC is calling in sick, or perhaps even calling in dead at this point, because Israel continues to knock off just layer by layer the upper echelons of the IRGC, the Quds Force, and the Iranian government. Now, with all that said, Iran came out this morning and claimed that they have air superiority over Israel. You heard that right. Iran says that they have established air superiority over Israel, and they can strike at will. They claim that they launched a Fatah 1 hypersonic missile toward Israel last night. We're going to talk more about that missile in a minute. That's a hypersonic missile, and there were a small number of Iranian missiles fired last night in the now I think we're up to 11 salvos or 11 barrages from Iran. But they keep getting smaller, and this last one was only about 15 missiles. No casualties were reported. Virtually all of those missiles were intercepted or failed before they even got to Israel. However, Iranian media is claiming that the regime now controls the skies over Israel. That's a pretty big trick, considering they don't have any airplanes, they don't have any helicopters, and their missiles are getting shot down on the regular. So there's just no evidence that supports Iran's claims. Now, Israel still maintains unrestricted air dominance over Iran without a shadow of a doubt. Now, there was an Israeli drone that was shot down in Iran today, and I've got video of that I can show you. No, that's the propaganda. Here we go. This is an Israeli uh, reconnaissance drone that was shot down inside Iran today, and Israel did corroborate that story and say, yes, we lost an unmanned aerial vehicle. And there were no injuries, obviously, because there's no men in there. And they also made it clear that there was no data on board that could assist the Iranians. And now I want to talk more about that shoot down. I want you to keep that in mind, because I'm going to talk about what China is doing and how those two might be related. Very, uh, very interesting stuff when it comes to what China is doing in Iran right now. So, want to just check, folks. We got how many people? Almost 2,000 people watching. Do me a favor and go hit that like button. And I forgot to say, tell me where you're watching from. Just type in the chat box where you're coming in from, and that blows up the chat and helps to blow up the number of people watching, because the algorithm then goes and shows it to a lot of people who are watching. For one or two of the people who are watching, Nathan, Holton, or my wife Connie, if somebody could bring me a drink, that would be a wonderful thing, because I'm about to die here. My throat's losing it. So thank you very much. Make sure you hit that like button. That little thumbs up doesn't cost you anything, but it does definitely help for you to hit that. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, why not? It says about half of the people watching are not subscribed. Uh, why not? It doesn't cost you anything there either. Just hit the subscribe button on our channel, and you can get notified before we go live on any of these on these daily live updates that I've been giving now for coming on 2 years. Isn't that amazing? Now, let's talk for a minute about the hypersonic missile before we get to what China is doing. Iran's newest hypersonic glide missile is reportedly capable of speeds up to Mach 15. Now, I don't know, I'm not very good at math, but Mach 15 is really stinking fast. And it also says that its hypersonic glide vehicle, that is, after it finishes and goes into its terminal phase, the vehicle can evade defenses. Thank you, dear. I'm dying. And that, if that's the case, it could easily bypass the missile defense systems like the Iron Dome and the Arrow. Now, up until maybe yesterday, or actually more like last October, this missile was unproven in combat, so a lot of its capabilities were just theoretical. And it was known to suffer from some targeting and guidance issues in the beginning. But it is believed that they have fewer than 10 of these that are operational. Those are intelligence estimates. So they better make them count. And this goes back to what I was saying before. I've said a couple times over the past week, it doesn't matter how many of Iran's missiles can make it through the Iron Dome air defense. They cannot, in their current strategy that they're using, which is just randomly targeting civilian areas, they cannot make a difference in the outcome of this war. Because the only thing they do when they strike civilian areas is they make the Israeli people more determined to destroy Iran's capability to do that. Now, if they were aiming those things at military targets and getting through, they might be able to have an effect. If they were aiming them at very important critical infrastructure, that might have a bigger effect on the economy of Iran, of Israel, or something like that. But with only 10, let's say they've only got 10 of these things, these hypersonic missiles that they feel like they can definitely get through. Why are they aiming them at civilian areas? It looks like they aimed one of them at the U.S. Embassy. I still have video of the one coming in the other night. If you recall this one, just looks like a bolt of lightning. Those other things that are falling out of the sky are Israeli Iron Dome missiles that are trying to shoot that thing down, but they just can't catch it. It's just too fast. So, with that in mind, Iran had better make them count if they're actually going to use it. And if it's true that they used a Fatah 1 last night, the only thing that was struck inside Israel last night was a car park. So they destroyed a few cars. And as I said, they're down to about 15 missiles in the last barrage. 15 missiles at a time is much easier for Israel to shoot down. And every barrage so far has been smaller than the one before. Part of that is because Israel keeps blowing up the launchers. And remember, it doesn't matter how many missiles they have. It only matters how many launchers they have. Now, the Fatah 1 uses solid rocket fuel and not liquid rocket fuel. And that's important because it doesn't take time to fuel it up before they launch it. It's already ready to go. They roll it out, they lift it up, and they launch it. It's one and done. That means I mean, you have to believe that because these are their most valuable, uh, most valuable missiles. They're not the most potent, but they're most valuable for sure. That Iran has them very well hidden and is working very hard to keep the launchers from getting blown up because they take a special kind of launcher. It's not like launchers are universal. So you need a Fatah 1 launcher to launch a Fatah 1. And so they're, even if they have 10 of those, doesn't really matter. Israel ought to just say, you know what, we're going to turn off our Iron Dome system for tonight. You go ahead and do your worst. We'll give you one. Just, do your best. Uh, Shoot all your Fatah missiles off, and we'll just let them land wherever you shoot them. And then we'll just pick up the pieces and go on from there. The thing is, those missiles that they go so fast, they can't carry as much payload as some of the slower ballistic missiles. So they're only maybe 200 to 300 kilograms of explosives, where some of the larger uh, ballistic missiles can carry up to a ton. And so it's not going to create as big of an explosion, as much damage as it would, although it's more likely to strike. But so far, they haven't struck anything important. I mean, if they really had precision guidance hypersonic missiles that could definitely make it through the Iron Dome system, you'd think that they would be aiming at the air base in the Negev, or they would be aiming at the Dimona nuclear facility or something like that. And believe me, they've been firing a lot of missiles at those two places, but they've all been shot down. And anything that landed, like last October, they had a couple of missiles that hit the air base at Netzarim, and they caused very little damage. They didn't stop operations at the air base at all, and they just kept right on rolling because they landed in the middle of an airfield somewhere and made a crater. Big deal. Go around it. So its arsenal is shrinking. Let's put it that way. Iran's missile arsenal is, every wave successively is less and less and less. And that suggests that the Israeli strikes are degrading Iran's launcher systems and their logistical chains that feed those launcher systems. Now, reports indicate Israel has targeted the mobile launchers, specifically, has been working very hard to find, fix, and finish those mobile launchers. And they've put out a lot of videos over the last couple of days of them blowing up missiles on the launchers as they prepared to fire at Israel. They keep that up, this war's all over but the crying. Because what happens when Iran no longer has launchers to shoot anything at Israel? What are they going to do? They're going to have to capitulate, because they will have nothing with which to strike at Israel. Now, that drone that went down, that Israel confirmed, was likely aimed at tracking the movement of those missiles and, passing those coordinates back to the IDF so that they could send planes to take out those missiles. You can bet that Israel has every drone they've got in the skies over Tehran at as much as possible to try to find not just Tehran, but over all of Iran, especially Western Iran. And they are searching for these missile launchers. Now, the Ayatollah Khamenei is one person who apparently uh, may not have left Iran just yet. There were some rumors that he was on his way to Moscow to hobnob with Bashar al Assad and Vladimir Putin. But he released a statement, a video statement today, and the the video was very poorly produced, which is rare for him. He didn't have a microphone on, so it was just like somebody filmed it on their phone in a bunker, because it sounded like he was inside a toilet. And what he said was, in part, quote, that he threatened the United States. Any military involvement by the US in this field will undoubtedly result in irreparable damage for them. So that's the Ayatollah Khamenei saying that the United States will suffer irreparable damage if we assist Israel in their strikes. Now, you and I both know we've been assisting Israel in terms of aerial refueling and targeting and surveillance and signals intelligence since the beginning. So is he saying, oh, if you, yeah, but that's okay. But if you drop bombs on us, then that's it. Irreparable damage for America. Well, the Ayatollah is not the only person who's telling the United States not to get involved. Russia today put out a threat as well. And let me see if I think I have the quote. They warned the United States against military involvement in the conflict. They declared that direct U.S. action would result in destabilizing consequences. What do they mean by that? Well, this is obviously just Putin trying to put pressure on President Trump, who's trying to balance support for Israel. At the same time, he's trying to avoid a direct confrontation with Russia. Now, it remains to be seen whether or not President Trump will be swayed by what Russia says. I hope he won't. I hope he will tell Russia to go pound sand. But it raises the stakes for sure. And I look, the Ayatollah response that this is going to result in irreparable damage for the United States is just clown show ridiculous. All right. Iran doesn't have a lot of cards left to play, to use a term that President Trump likes. One of the cards they have left to play are their sleeper cells inside the United States, but we'll deal with that. And again, sleeper cells attacking venues in the United States, whether by uh, mass shootings or whatever, that's not going to change the outcome of this war. If anything, it just will galvanize the American public against the regime and will serve to uh, make it a foredrawn conclusion that the regime will fall. So Khamenei's got to take that into account. Uh, Now, while Tehran is empty and the people are fleeing for their lives, as soon as the Ayatollah made that broadcast, Israel launched heavy airstrikes on the neighborhood in Tehran where Khamenei is believed to be sheltering. And so we may not hear anything else from him. We haven't heard one way or the other whether those airstrikes managed to get him, but it looks like they were at least sending him a message. And that is, we know where you are and we can come get you if we want you. Now, at the same time that the Iranians are claiming to have air superiority over Israel, the Israeli government is opening up their economy again. They are now going from everybody stay home, stay near your bunker, don't go to work, don't go to school, don't gather together in any groups outside or inside. Now they are going to allow limited civilian activity to resume. They are allowing small group gatherings up in the northern part of the country. They're allowing between, let's see, 50 groups of up to 50 people outside and 100 people inside, but they all have to have access to a shelter nearby. And they are not going to reopen the schools yet, but they are going to try to reopen their economy and let people start going back to work. So what this signals is a reduced threat. It signals that Israel is saying, it looks like we've got this under control. They took a few licks there at the beginning, but the last few volleys from Iran have been all been ineffective. So, not great. Now, man, there's a ton of comments going by. I can't even read them. They're going by so fast. So I'm missing some of your questions. I'm sorry about that. Matter of fact, I will go back and try to answer some of those questions. Mama Marissa, if you could uh, pin any interesting questions or any of the other mods that are watching, that'd be helpful. I can just look up there and pin and see the pinned questions. So yeah, and if you want to check out more of my reporting, go over to chuckholton.com and become a subscriber over there. That's one way that I can sort of future proof the channel from the vagaries of YouTube because, man, every time, those videos I just showed you of, the hypersonic missile coming in and all that sort of thing. Well, showing you that video likely got this video demonetized. And it's not a person doing it, it's the algorithm that does it. Somehow they have an algorithm at YouTube that looks at the videos, and if it sees something that looks like it might be potentially violent, they just demonetize the video automatically. Then I have to go back and I have to dispute that demonetization. And usually they wait about 2 days and then remonetize the video, which of course is useless because it's already had the majority of its views. So that means I just worked for free if we do that. So that's why I encourage you to go over to chuckholton.com and just, buy me a coffee over there or whatever by becoming a supporter. And there's a lot of great stuff you get for doing that. A lot of extra content and stuff that you don't get here on YouTube. So it's a good deal, win-win all the way around. All right, so I saw a question there. Do you think China could resupply Iran? Well, I'm going to talk about China in just a second, Karen. I thank you for asking that question. John Bull says, how bad were the Haifa hits? Well, there were several throughout the last 6 days that struck in Haifa. One, I think, hit an oil refinery or a portion of one there. The one that got through last night, they say blew up a car park and fried a couple of cars, and that's all. But there were no injuries last night in the barrage that came through. All right, so let's move on. Now, the United States has continued cargo flights to Israel over the last 24 hours. At least 5 U.S. Air Force C-17s have landed in Israel. The cargo that they're carrying is likely THAAD missile batteries, Patriot missile batteries, not the batteries, but the missiles themselves, and perhaps some Arrow interceptor systems, because Israel has been burning through those things pretty fast over the last 6 days. As a matter of fact, reports suggest Israel is spending as much as $275 million a night on their Iron Dome interceptions. So we're talking about a lot of money. And those, they have to fire multiple Iron Dome interceptors, sometimes a dozen or more at each missile to try to take it down. And of course, the THAAD missile systems are very expensive as well. The U.S. troops that are on the ground in Israel are getting some good combat experience, folks. And this is the first time, I think, ever that the THAAD missile system has been used by Americans in actual combat situation. So they're getting some good combat, uh, you know, combat experience. The United States military resupply points to deepening logistical involvement. And even without formal military action, the United States is saying, we still stand with you, Israel. And that's great. Kudos to President Trump for his stance on Israel. Now, cyber attacks have been striking Iranian financial systems. Iranian banks and crypto exchanges are under heavy cyber attack. Their main bank that the IRGC uses was taken offline, and they're actually saying that if they are able to get it back up, all of the digital currency that's in there might be gone. It might not even be available. Citizens right now are unable to withdraw funds or convert currency inside Iran. And that's causing a run on banks. And of course, the banks are closed and people are just frantic because they're afraid they're not going to be able to get their money out ever, maybe. That could be bad. And it appears to be a coordinated cyber campaign, possibly by Israel's Unit 8200 and the Mossad. Unit 8200 is their cyber warfare branch. And there was also a coordinated cyber attack on an Iranian crypto exchange that Iran uses to fund its terror networks. And the hackers that took it over, or they broke in, have said that they will release all of the back end data for that crypto exchange to the internet in 24 hours. So we'll see what happens with that. These attacks, obviously, they're part of the total war that we're looking at between these two countries. It's not just a war in the kinetic space, it's also a war in the uh, information space, it's a war in the uh, cyberspace, and the economic battle space with sanctions and the strikes on critical infrastructure. So, all of that bodes poorly for Iran. Okay. And honestly, I would say no later than 2 weeks from now, if I had to make a pronouncement and say what I think is going to happen, I have a feeling that the Iranian government is going to collapse within the next 14 days. Could be within the next 14 hours, but they're on the path to collapse right now. Now, that reminds me, because I'm normally wrong with my, what if I ever make a prediction, there's just too many variables to accurately make predictions. So take any prediction that you hear from me or anybody else with a grain of salt. And I'll just humbly say that I've always been pretty bad at predictions. Uh, Things always look like they're going in one direction to me, and then they go at the last minute. Um, but I, I also need to admit that I made a mistake in a live 2 days ago. I meant to say it yesterday and I forgot. I said that Israel went over $100 a barrel, which was very surprising to me. But it turns out the report I read was just very poorly worded. And no, it was actually predicting that oil could spike to $100 to $120 a barrel if the United States joins the conflict. I went back and read that article again because then some people called me out on it and said oil's not over $100 a barrel, and I went and looked, and sure enough, it wasn't. This is what happens when I try to drink through a fire hose of information to get ready for these lives. But I went back and read the article where I got that information, and it was just really poorly worded. It was just the way it was written was confusing. So that's my bad. But when I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong, and I was wrong on that. Oil is not over $100 a barrel, but it may get there if the United States goes to war. So that's what this report was saying. I don't know. Uh, Now, will the United States go to war? I don't know. All the indicators are pointing that way for sure. There are two B-2 Spirit bombers that are, as we speak, en route from Whiteman Air Force Base in the United States. They took off earlier today. They have an unrefueled range of over 6,000 nautical miles, and they can go more than 10,000 nautical miles with mid-air refueling. Now, they don't disclose their flight paths, but 6,000 nautical miles would get them to Iran at least. It's about 5,300, as far as I can tell, nautical miles from Whiteman Air Force Base to Tehran. And so they are capable of reaching Iran and returning. Of course, they would have to in flight refuel. And let me just say, I am so grateful to God that I was not called to be a B 2 pilot because I really don't enjoy flying. I mean, it's just boring to me. It's just like, sitting in a chair and you can't go anywhere and there's very little to do and up in the sky for many, many hours. B 2 bombers regularly fly 10 hours at a stretch. The record for a B 2 bomber without landing is 40 hours in the air. 40 hours? How do you do that? It's not like those pilots can get up and walk around, man. I mean, look, I'm sure that they have some little tube apparatus or something to that they can pee in if they have to go to the bathroom while they're flying. But what about everything else? What about things like sleep? I mean, holy cow, they must juice those guys up with drugs. And I mean, the Air Force has been known to do that. There's a drug called modafinil. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, that Air Force pilots often take. It was originally used for narcolepsy, and modafinil is kind of like 21st century caffeine. It's not a stimulant, so it doesn't make you jittery and crazy, but it just fires up the centers of interest and focus in your brain. So you just get very interested in and focused on whatever you're doing. Now, in Panama, modafinil is available over the counter. And I came to find out that modafinil is the number one uh, most prescribed drug in the world off label. What I mean is, prescribed for something other than what it was originally meant for. And I went and got some and tried it out. And sure enough, I can tell you why, because man, it makes me so focused. Like if I'm writing, normally in a day, I can handle writing about 1,000 words on one of my books before I just have to like, okay, I'm done. My brain is fried. I can write about 4 or 5,000 words if I take a modafinil, and I can type like 20% faster. I mean, I'm just crushing it. And you could drive a train through the house and it wouldn't matter. I'd still be just typing away. So I'm sure that these pilots are, they have drugs like that at their disposal. But even still, I would hate to be one of those pilots. I just don't want to sit on an airplane that long. Yuck. Now, why might those B 2s have taken off from Whiteman Air Force Base and headed to the Middle East? Well, your guess is as good as mine. The roles that the B 2 bomber plays are one of strategic deterrence, normally, meaning people are not going to mess with America because America has the B 2 bomber. And it can penetrate enemy radar and bomb pretty much anything on the planet if we want to. So if you really definitely want to get something destroyed overnight, call the B 2 bomber. It also is nuclear capable and it can support other kinds of covert strikes. So it may be doing one or more of those things as it's flying over the Middle East. And remember, we have some of those at Diego Garcia already. And so maybe we're just taking a few more of them over there. All signs, though, point to the United States making big preparations to join in the fight in a big way. And as I said yesterday, and I got a lot of flack for this, but I think that President Trump sees the writing on the wall. He sees that Israel is about to absolutely crush the Iranian threat, and Trump wants to get him some of that. He wants to be able to claim that, yeah, United States, we did it. Good for him. That's not the most humble thing you could do, but good for him. It is. Uh, uh, we don't need to get involved militarily to be able to claim that we had a hand in this, because as I've said, we've already been helping with defending Israel so that they can focus on taking out Iran. We've focused on shooting down missiles. We put our own troops at risk to do so. And we've been helping to refuel Israeli aircraft in the air. So we are helping already, plenty. To say nothing of the, of providing the various missiles and munitions that we've given to Israel. So, but President Trump needs to be good to his word. And he said at the beginning of this thing that he would be leading the charge if it was time to strike Iran. Um, so, all right, let's see if it happens. Now, let's talk about China's very sketchy military flights into Iran. Satellite imagery and data tracking, flight tracking, radar and stuff have shown Chinese military cargo aircraft landing at Iranian airfields over the past few days. There have been at least 3 flights that we know of, and these are large military cargo aircraft. Now, that begs the question, what's the cargo? What are they taking to Iran? Um, well, okay, so it could include things like drones or drone parts, radar systems, air defense systems, things like that. Um, China does not want to be seen as jumping into this fight on the side of Iran, but they also don't want Iran to collapse because Iran is basically a proxy state for China. Now, by if you try to put yourself in China's shoes, think like a Chinese general. If I was a Chinese general and I was anticipating that we were going to go to war with the United States in the next couple of years, and we have a bunch of unproven technology that might or might not work against Western weapons, I might look at this as an opportunity. And I might say, maybe if we ship some of our newfangled Chinese drones or radar systems or air defense components into Iran and help the Iranians set them up and use them, we can find out whether or not Chinese technology is as good as we hope it is. And if it's not, then that might inform our decision whether or not to try to take Taiwan in 2027. Now, are they doing that? I don't know. That's pure conjecture. But we know that there are cargo planes flying into Iran, and I just, they're not going to be able to bring in enough military or like air defense components to really make much of a difference. Now, it could possibly, you could maybe draw a line between the Israeli drone that just got shot down, and we don't know what shot it down, but we know where it was shot down. So it would be very interesting to find out whether or not there were any Chinese military planes going anywhere near there in the last few days. Now, some intelligence suggests that they might also be extracting nuclear scientists or other kinds of sensitive hardware or intelligence archives, etc. Yesterday, Israel bombed the nuclear backup. Basically, they have like a giant underground backup hard drive where they store all of their nuclear secrets, all their nuclear technology. It's a database that's designed to preserve that knowledge in case everything else gets wiped out. Well, yesterday, Israel struck that backup site and destroyed it. So we don't know for sure whether or not the stuff that we hoped was in that site was actually there. And it is certainly possible that Iran anticipated that that site would be struck and moved the most important intelligence archives out of there and put them in a regular I mean, that'd be the smart thing to do. Put them in a regular taxi, just a normal civilian vehicle, not a military vehicle at all, and just drive the speed limit and drive out to a remote airstrip somewhere that probably isn't getting a lot of views from Western intel services. And then when one of those Chinese planes comes in, you throw that technology, that intelligence archive on the plane, and it takes off again and goes and hides it in China somewhere. So China may actually be using Iran as a test bed to evaluate its own systems, but it may also be assisting Tehran at getting important things out of Iran, like people and information. Okay. Now, I mentioned that Russia gave a warning to the United States. Russia warned the United States against military conflict. Uh, that's interesting because we, I mean, we figure that oil prices will spike if the United States goes to war with Iran. So I think that privately, Putin would like it to happen because A, it ties up the United States and diverts our attention from other conflicts like Ukraine. And B, it makes the price of oil go up. So Putin will be able to make enough money to pay his soldiers. But I think that publicly, because Putin has treaties with Iran, they've got to try to at least make noises that make it sound like they don't want it to happen. And maybe they don't. Maybe there's something I'm missing there. Um, Now, this certainly raises the stakes, but I just have to say, Moscow is saying that if the U.S. gets involved in this war, it will result in destabilizing consequences. Oh, yeah? Uh, Russia doesn't have much of a leg to stand on here, considering that they are firing something like 400 to 500 drones and missiles every single night into civilian areas in Ukraine. Last night, more than 25 people were killed in Ukraine by Russian missiles striking civilian areas. Russia does not aim at military targets, they aim at civilian targets, and they are aiming to punish Ukraine as much as possible before Russia just all out collapses. Now, Ukraine, for its part, is saying, we don't know if we're going to be able to keep getting uh, supplies of missiles and ammunition and things like that from the United States and other partners. So they're going to start taking it on themselves now, and they've come up with their own intermediate range, or short to intermediate range ballistic missile that they're now mass producing inside Ukraine, that will be shown up on the battlefields here shortly, and we'll see what kind of pressure that puts on the Russian army. There have been a couple of skirmishes up near Sumy lately in the north of Ukraine where Russia had been able to push Ukraine and move the lines a little bit closer to Sumy, and Ukraine just pushed Russia back out. So that's a good sign for sure. Now, here's something interesting that happened. The Mossad appealed to uh, Iranian civilians on Twitter. The Mossad published messages. I'm sorry, not the Mossad, the IDF. The IDF published a message in Farsi today encouraging Iranian civilians to report regime activity. And they say that thousands of tips have already come in from inside Iran. So they say that the Iranians themselves are contacting the IDF and saying, please, here's a good place you should be bombing right now. Please go bomb this place over there. Please help us get rid of this regime. And what the message said in Farsi was, we're the wrong, you have a wrong number. The IDF is not the place to report that stuff. Report it to the Mossad. And here's the link to their website, and so you can send your tips to the Mossad, and we'll get to them on a first come first served basis, something like that. Now, Israel is obviously and actively leveraging Iranian dissent in order to disrupt Iran's military operations from within. And it's working. So Iran's military capacity is being degraded in real time. Israel has demonstrated air superiority and dominance in the intel field, no matter what Iran says. China and Russia are engaging in asymmetric support for Iran, but not supporting them overtly yet. And there have been some pretty amazing cyber ops and psyops that have been taking place by both Israel and the United States. And that's where it stands right now. Okay, now we got 3,500 people online, and we only have 2,000 likes. So please hit the like button and go over to chuckholton.com and sign up over there. Lisa Michinsky says, do you think the Iranian people can overthrow the regime and take control of their country? Well, we're seeing more and more uh, protests across Iran. It's hard. It's hard to tell because, first of all, they shut off the internet in Iran now. Now, Elon Musk says that he turned on Starlink inside Iran, but I don't know that it's. I don't know that that makes internet available to people's cell phones. I know that Starlink is working on that capability, but you might still have to have a Starlink dish inside Iran to make much out of that. So I'm not sure that Starlink being turned on inside Iran is actually helping a lot. It's sure helping a little bit, but maybe not a lot. But so on social media, the videos that you're seeing of Iranians uh, marching in the streets, women taking off their hijabs and dancing and singing in the streets and things like that. A lot of those videos are old videos that are being recycled. So you have to take them all with a grain of salt. And it's real hard to sift through all those things and try to figure out what's actually current. But suffice it to say, from what I'm hearing here in Armenia from Iranians themselves who are here, it's that everybody in Iran hates the government and wants the government to fall. So the United States government, the Israeli government, and many other governments are calling on the people of Iran to rise up and overthrow their government and saying that we'll stand behind you if you do. But it's still on the Iranian people to do that. And so far, we have several reports of brutal repression by the Iranian police that are still in charge. Okay, so KP1 asks, is it plausible that this event comes quickly and gets resolved so fast that no one will stand to make a penny off this conflict? How would that happen if so? Well, like I said, if Iran runs out of the ability to strike at Israel, then it's game over. I mean, the all that remains is for Israel to finish the job of destroying the nuclear program inside Iran, and they will have pretty much carte blanche to do so. Now, before we end up there, I want to just talk about how that would get done, because if the United States does not get involved with our B-2 bombers and our, um, uh, 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs, Israel says they still have a way to take out the Fordo nuclear site, which is the one that's buried so deep underground that they would need the bunker busters to take them out. I've been doing a bunch of research on that lately, and on just the various ways that Iran could potentially lose its Fordo base to Israeli shenanigans, special operations, things like that. And, looking into, would it be possible for them to, let's say, flood the underground areas of Fordo without blowing it up, just by dumping water down uh, the air vents, stuff like that. I mean, I've been just like racking my brain, like what, because Israel says they have a plan to take out Fordo without U.S. involvement. And so I've been racking my brain saying, well, what would they do? What could they do? As it turns out, there might possibly be a way to introduce a gas, an inert gas, into the the ventilation shafts at Fordo, and that gas would cause the centrifuges in Fordo to self-destruct. So, I mean, there are some creative ways that could potentially result in the destruction of Fordo. It'll be very interesting to see that if that happens. But really, the simplest answer is probably the best one, and that would be to get the United States to come drop some bunker busters on it. And there you go. If that doesn't happen, the Israelis could theoretically parachute in a bunch of special forces guys and break into the facility, go underground, and manually destroy it. The bottom line is those centrifuges, of which they say they could have uh, like tens of thousands of these centrifuges, right? They are some of the most sensitive scientific equipment on the planet. These centrifuges operate on magnetic bearings, and they spin at speeds up to 70,000 RPM. The reason they do that, just to kind of give you a quick primer on how these centrifuges work, and so you can understand how fragile they are, they gasify uranium because there are two uranium isotopes that are basically identical: uranium 235 and uranium 238. 238 is not helpful. 235 is what they want for nuclear weapons. And so to get them apart, get those atoms apart, to separate them, they put them in a centrifuge and they spin that centrifuge in a vacuum at very high rates of speed, 70,000 RPM. Those isotopes, then the one that's a tiny bit heavier will go to the outside if it's in a gaseous form inside there. But those heavier atoms will migrate to the outside while the lighter ones will stay closer to the middle. And then they siphon off the atoms that are on the outside of the centrifuge and put them into another centrifuge and do it over again. And then they keep doing that and keep uh, enriching, is the term, that gas until it is at a sufficient level of purity of uranium 235 that it can be used for weapons. At that point, they expose it to moisture, and that makes it solidify. They can put it into a metal, or they can put it into ceramic pellets. If it's for like a nuclear power plant, they only need to enrich that stuff to like 5%. And then they put it in these ceramic pellets. They put the ceramic pellets into rods, and that's the fuel rods that you hear about in nuclear power plants. If it's enriched to weapons grade, 90%, then it gets turned into a metal, and then that metal gets cut into precise geometric shapes and used to, in a very highly secretive process that's not just secretive, but illegal to even know about, unless you're a nuclear power. In a very sensitive process, put them into a bomb and make a bomb out of them. Now, as I was reading through these reports, the IAEA said that they actually did an inspection back in, I want to say 2021 or 23, 2023. They did an inspection at Fordo, and they found uranium isotopes that were enriched to 85%, only 5% short of weapons grade. Now, that's quite a bit higher than the 60% we were told. Thank you, RL. Very kind of you. Thank you, CA. Also, I missed that one. Uh, but that was quite a bit higher than even the 60% that we were told that they had. That so it's no wonder Israel, assuming that Israel and the United States had better intelligence at their disposal in the government than we do, it's no wonder that Israel decided they had to go hard on Iran right now. Mark Levant asks, why doesn't Israel take out the airfields? Airfields are very hard to take out. Uh, it takes, you can drop bombs on the runways and crater the runways, but all it takes is a bulldozer or something like that, front end loader, to just go fill those potholes in with dirt and smooth them out, and you're back in business. So they're just very easy to fix. Now, there are other ways you can do that. I used to be on a jump clearing team when I was in the Rangers a long time ago. And there would be other things you could do to make it more difficult. But suffice it to say, right now, Israel has more important targets. Okay. Elaine Golden says, was that 5% or 35%? 5% for nuclear power, 3% or less for medical uses, 90% enrichment for weapons grade uranium. Thank you, Leah. Appreciate that. I'm not in Israel yet. I'm still in Ukraine. I'm sorry, I'm still in Armenia, but I will be getting to Israel as soon as I can. It just may be a couple weeks from now. Kind of hard to get there at the moment. Can Trump strike Iran without congressional approval, even if it's just one bomb? Short answer is yes, he can. Should he? Maybe no, but can he? Yes. Uh, do you stop? How do you stop any fallout or whatever? And isn't this a danger with bunker busters? So if they blow up let's say a store of uranium that Iran has stored in one of these bunkers, it's not going to cause a nuclear explosion. It's nuclear explosions are much more difficult than that to cause. It could potentially spread nuclear material, think dust, around an area in the immediate region. But it's not going to go much further than that. So it's not going to go up into the atmosphere and go all around the world. It's not going to be a Fukushima or something like that. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. All right, folks. So just one more time, I wanted to mention, what's your opinion on Christians who say Israel and the Jews aren't the same as biblical Israel and that we shouldn't support them? Very good question, Tokyo Karma. That's a very good question. I could do an entire live about that, a podcast about that sometime, and maybe I will. I'll give you the shortest answer I can. It is certain that the current government of Israel is not God's chosen people. Now, the Bible says that God raises up kings and tears down kings. And so I'm not saying that Benjamin Netanyahu was not chosen for such a time as this. I think he was. But by and large, the government of Israel is secular and is left wing by many measures. And so it's certainly possible to say, I don't support that. I don't support some of the socialist things that Israel does. I don't support some of the, ways that they take away and have taken away the freedom of their people, especially back during the 2020 outbreak. Israel did some egregious things against its own people. And if any government, ours or anybody else's, does something that's morally reprehensible, then we should say so, because morality should be our primary measuring stick. However, the state of Israel is uh, it's a completion of a biblical prophecy. It is God bringing the people back to the land. And you can't get around the fact that the Bible tells us that he who blesses Israel will be blessed, and he who curses Israel will be cursed. And commands us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So, what does it mean to bless Israel? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bless everything the government does, but I believe that means that, number one, Israelis deserve to have their own country. And I support Israel as a country. I support their right to exist. And if you want to call me a Zionist for that, okay, guilty as charged. I'm a Zionist. I believe that Israelis deserve to have their own country. And it makes sense that their own country should be in a place which is where their ancestors were walking the earth 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, for sure. So, following the biblical command to bless Israel, to me, means supporting Israel in trying to maintain its sovereignty. And we can certainly pray and hope that Israel will get righteous leaders who will steer the country in a way that's righteous. And they may not always do that. We should call them out when they don't. But overall, I think you're splitting hairs. Oh, well, these Jews aren't the Jews that were in Israel during the time of the Old Testament. Well, duh, of course not. They're the descendants of those people, though. And that's got to count for something, doesn't it? Now you could say, well, under the new covenant, Christians are grafted into the vine. Yeah, but we didn't become the vine. That doesn't mean we are the vine exclusively. And all I'm saying is that, again, you're asking somebody who's not a biblical scholar. I've just been a Christian for a long time. And I read my Bible through cover to cover every year. And so, in my opinion, supporting Israel as a nation, supporting Israel's right to exist, it doesn't even matter if they are God's chosen people. It's just the moral thing to do. If the Israelis, imagine this, if the Israelis on October 7th, instead of Hamas breaking through the fence and flooding into Israel and murdering 1,200 innocent people, if the Israelis had done the same thing and had unprovoked broken through the fence and started murdering people in Gaza, then I would be condemning the Israeli government for doing that, because that would have been immoral and wrong. For them to do it, to be killing people in Gaza now, especially because they're trying so hard not to kill civilians, is a different story, because they're now it's a defense because of what happened on October 7th. But anyway, like I say, I could do a whole podcast about that. Maybe I'll do that over on Locals sometime. So you're going to want to go sign up over there. All right, folks, we're over an hour. We've gone late, but thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. And I hope that you will like and share this with your friends, and make sure again that you go visit our sponsor. That's Preserve Gold. And here's their website up here. Preserve Gold. You just text the word Chuck to 50505, and they have trained people who will help you make sense of what amount of gold would be right for you. They also sell silver and platinum and other things. So these guys have they're very solid. moral people. And if am going to buy, if I'm looking in the market to buy gold, then Preserve Gold is a place I should go. All right. And so this is their website. I've got up here. You can go look it up, preservegold.com. Okay.